Welcome back to my channel. I'm Joe, Smokin Joe's Pit Barbecue. On today's video, I'm going to install the new ACS controller along with the new ceramic igniter on my Yoder YS640 pellet smoker. Stay tuned. Alright, let's get started on the installation here. A couple of basic tools you're going to need. They are listed in the instructions as well. You're going to need a 5/16 socket, a 3/8 socket, a 7/16 wrench, a small Phillips head screwdriver. Now I got a couple of screwdrivers, didn't know exactly how small, so I just brought a couple out of the Phillips and a flathead screwdrivers as well. I got a small adjustable wrench, some small pliers, and as I mentioned, a large flat blade screwdriver and a small flat blade screwdriver as well. Now, one thing that's not listed on the instructions is an extension, a 3/8 extension. I brought that out just in case. And I also have a magnetic tray that I'm going to use to put a lot of the screws into that way I don't lose them. So I'm going to put them on this magnetic tray. So the instructions say the first step is to empty out the hopper on your smoker, take out your grates, take out the deflector plate as well. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll bring you guys back. Stay tuned. Alright, so let's get started on this conversion. Now, one thing I failed to mention earlier is to make sure that all the contents of the retrofit kit are there, all the screws, the gaskets, everything you need to go ahead and do the retrofit kit. You don't want to be halfway into the retrofit kit and find out that you're missing something. So now the first step is to remove the 11 screws that are around this outside panel. So there's some on the front, some on the side, and some on the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and remove those, and I'll bring you guys back. Alright, so I've got all 11 screws off the outside edge. Now I'm just going to grab the panel, pull it out, and I'm going to lean it in. And there's two wires on the fan. There's a green and a white. Okay, just going to disconnect those, just pulling them a little bit. And since this is a competition cart, I've got two wires, two purple wires that go to the fuse. So I'm going to go ahead and remove those two. Just like that. Now the outside panel comes off along with the fan. I'm just going to set that aside for now. Now there's also an inner fan. Let's see if you guys can see that. There's an inner fan right there, and there are two wires that go to that on the side, a green and a white wire. So I'm just going to take those off as well. Okay, let's go to the next step. Alright, so the next three steps are to simply remove the two 5/16 bolts from the old control unit. This is off the front panel. Okay, these are shorter screws. And again, having that little magnetic tray really helps because all my screws are in one spot. So if you can get one, grab one at a parts store, and I think it'll save you some time. You won't lose your screws, that's for sure. So go ahead and take out the old controller. Okay. And there are two wires in here. Just go ahead and pull that out a little bit. There are two wires that you're going to loosen up, which are these two right here, this red one and this white one. That goes to the thermocouple or thermocoupler. So just get a small pocket screwdriver, loosen those two screws like I'm doing here. Okay, and then just pull the wires out. Alright, next step is to grab the igniter wire, which is this one right here. It's got a connector on it. Just lift this little tab with your thumb and separate them. Just like that, you can hear it click. Just go ahead and separate them. Then go ahead and pull out all the wires. There's a tie strap under here. You're going to pull out all the wires that you've disconnected already. Unplug any of the spade connectors. There's three connectors over here in the back. There's a yellow wire, a white wire, and a black wire. Okay, just go ahead and pull those through that plastic tie strap as well. And there's also two wires, a red and a black, right up here, spade connectors as well. Go ahead and unplug those. Pull those wires through the tie strap. If you happen to break it, you can always install another tie strap there on the top to run your wires. So at that point, the old controller is out. Stay tuned. All right, step number 9 is there are 10 bolts in here that you need to take off. Now there's 2 bolts at the very top, kind of like at 11 o'clock and 1 o'clock, that you don't want to remove those. Okay, so do not remove those. But there's 10 other screws, same self-tapping screws that we removed on the outer cover. There's 10 of them right here on the inside. Now I am using a 3/8 extension for this one. So just go ahead and remove all 10 screws. And set them aside. We'll be right back. All right, so I've got all 10 screws out. Now, if you notice, I've got my thermocouple just hanging in here, okay? I did take the screws off of that, and I'm just gonna go ahead and pull the wires through. Now, my thermocouple is working just fine, okay? But I did order a spare just in case. I'm gonna go ahead and install that spare, or that new one, and keep this one as my spare. My smoker's about 3 years old now, and I don't want to have any problems. I know that things wear out, especially electrical things, so I don't expect for them to last forever. So order yourself an extra one. Now, step 10 is there's 2 3/8 bolts right under the burn pot or behind the burn pot that we need to take off. Okay, so this one's going to be a little bit tricky. You have to kind of get in there. And what I like to do is, I do have a drill, but I'm using my ratchet because not everybody has a drill, right? So I'm just going to loosen them with a ratchet. Once they get loose enough, I'll take the socket off, my ratchet, and just work them off like that. All right, stay tuned. All right, so the next step, now that we got all the screws from the cooking chamber removed, is to lift the hopper. Just lift it up and make sure your igniter comes out completely, just like that. And go ahead and set it right on the cart itself. Now I do have a competition cart, so now this is gonna allow me to go ahead and give me some room to remove the old igniter, which has got 2 5/16 bolts right here. I'm gonna go ahead and take those off and go ahead and mount my igniter. Okay, stay tuned. All right, so the next step is to locate the fuse holder on the outside panel that we removed earlier. Just remove that plastic nut. Mine was it wasn't really tight, so just loosen that nut by hand and set that fuse holder aside for now. All right, next step is step number 13, is to locate the Wi-Fi antenna extension. And it does have a nut when you buy it, when you open the package. So what you want to do is take that nut off along with that washer, okay? And there's 2 rubber washers in the kit. Just install one of the washers. Now again, I do have the competition cart, so when I remove the hopper, I just moved it aside enough to clear the cart. Go ahead and put your antenna extension through that hole, okay? On the other side, I'm going to go ahead and install the other washer, put the lock washer and the nut, and tighten it with a 5/16 socket, but be very careful because it's a small part, so just be gentle when you tighten it. Stay tuned. All right, I want to bring you guys back. So this is where that 7/16 wrench comes in handy. And what I did, I just held it with a wrench here. I didn't even use my ratchet, I just tightened it by hand, okay? So just tighten it snug, nice and snug, and that's good enough for me. Stay tuned. All right, next step is to go ahead and attach your antenna. We're going to just tighten this by hand. Now, because this antenna is going to go behind the cart, you got to be very careful once we place this hopper back into place. So just going to tighten it up by hand and leave it extended like that. Stay tuned. All right, so I went ahead and hung my hopper back onto my smoker. Just again, make sure that you have enough clearance on the antenna because it is on the bottom down here on the cart right here. So you don't want to smash it, okay? Just be careful. What I did is I just put the hopper up against the smoker and made sure that the antenna was clearing the cart, and then set it in place and then push it up against the smoker. Again, just be gentle with it, take your time, and you'll be okay. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and bring you guys back to the smoking chamber right here. Okay, now since I've already got my hopper on there, I'm going to go ahead and put or install the 10 screws that we removed earlier. Again, 10 screws along with my new thermocouple. Okay, Now I'm just going to put the screws in. At this point, I'm not going to run the wires through the chamber wall itself. So stay tuned. All right, so I've got all 10 screws back on the hopper wall here. And I also installed my new thermocouple that you can see right there. Now the next thing is, don't forget about these two bolts that go down inside the fire pot. The fire pot itself. Go ahead and tighten those up. We'll see you guys in the next step. All right, so the next step is we need to remove this housing here, and it is held with nothing but silicone. So just grab your large flat blade screwdriver and put it on one corner and just kind of lift up a little bit. Go to the other corner. There we go. And that helps break that silicone. Okay, so you just might have to work a little bit, just like that. Then your housing, your fan housing comes out completely. Now what you want to do is set this aside. There's a lot of silicone that's still left over here. So grab a razor blade or use the same screwdriver and remove the silicone. Then just grab a rag and go ahead and clean up this area. Okay, stay tuned. All right, so I've got my fan housing and fan out. Now these steps say to grab a Phillips screwdriver to remove these Phillips head screws here, but there's no way that you're going to fill it or put a Phillips head through this hole right here. Okay, so I got myself an 11/32 socket with a long extension, 1/4 inch, and I'm just going to go ahead and remove these bolts. This is way easier. Just loosen them up. It even gets these back ones right here. They're a little tight. Okay, 11/32 is the nut size. At that point, you can just use your fingers to remove the bolts and the nuts. Stay tuned. All right, so the fan comes off pretty easy once you take off the 4 bolts. Now we're going to put the new fan in there, and this is the top of the fan housing. And if you can see there's an arrow. It says airflow. You want to put that arrow pointing towards that housing. Go ahead and put your screws on there and your nuts, and go and tighten the nuts on the other side. Stay tuned. All right, so I've got my fan housing flipped over, and I just wiped the flange here. I just wiped them down. Next step is to apply a thin bead of the silicone that comes in the kit. So just a nice thin bead, probably, I don't know, maybe 1/4 inch thick. Okay, apply it to both sides. Now you don't want to let this sit out like most of your gasket jobs. Okay, you want to immediately take it over back to the smoker and go ahead and set it in place. Stay tuned. All right, so let's install this inner fan housing. Just move all the wires out of the way and walk it back in there. Okay, now you want to make sure that you don't get your igniter wire pinched. Just make sure it's in that C-notch right there. And go ahead and walk it all the way back. You can see where it stops. It'll actually hit that back wall. And it kind of centers itself right there. And that's it. All right, so next step is to get your new controller. And there's 4 screws that hold the back cover on. You just want to take those off and go ahead and pass the wires through the cover slot here carefully, and set that back cover aside. Now I went ahead and passed the wires for my thermocouple through the firewall or the firebox. There's a small hole inside the hopper here, and I just passed them through. So at this point, we're going to install them back in here. Now there's 2 screws I hope you guys can see them right here. So we're just going to loosen those up, both of them. Okay, then we're going to install our wires. The red one goes closest to the antenna right here. That's where the red wire goes. So we're just going to put it right here. Oops. Right here. And go and tighten down that small screw. Hope you guys can see that. Hopefully I'm not covering it. Okay. Nice and tight. Just like that. Then the next wire is the white wire. Goes in that second slot right there. And go ahead and tighten down that screw as well. Alright, so I went ahead and installed the 4 screws on the back of the ACS controller, tighten them up with a Phillips screwdriver. And there's 2 screws on the face of the controller. Take those out. Go ahead and pass your controller to the front face of the smoker here. Put the 2 screws on, get them tightened up, and we'll be back. Alright, so install the ACS controller, tighten that up. Put the antenna extension on there, tighten that up with a wrench. Put the auger motor connectors back on there. The black goes on the top, the red goes on the bottom. Went ahead and plugged in my new igniter as well with a new connector. So that's just going to go back in there. Okay, there's a short green wire and a white wire. That's for the inner fan. The green wire goes towards the smoker itself. The white wire goes on the outside. I installed the AC power wires. White goes on the outside. The black one goes on the inside. Now this wire, your smoker might have a green wire. Mine happens to have a yellow wire, but that one goes in the middle. So the only thing that we have to connect now is the outer fan and the fuse. Okay, so let's mount that fan. Stay tuned. All right, step number 35 is to simply remove the old fan from the outer panel. So just take off the 4 screws and have your other panel, your new panel that the kit comes with, ready. Stay tuned. All right, so this is the new outer panel that your kit comes with. There's a felt gasket, almost like an insulator, if you will. I'm just going to peel this backing off and stick it right here. Just line the 4 holes. The other thing that we're going to do is I've got my fuse holder here, okay, and we're going to go ahead and install that. Real simple. Just put it in through like that and put your nut on there. Now be careful not to over tighten this nut because you will break it. In fact, I think if you have a strong hand, just use that. Then we're going to mount our fan back onto the outer panel and I'll bring you guys back. Stay tuned. All right, we are just about done here. The last thing is I've got my outer panel and I've got the long green wire and the long white wire here. The white wire goes on the furthest connection, the one closest to the panel itself. So just push that back into place, just like that. The green wire goes on the inside towards the smoker itself. They're a little bit tight, so just kind of work them in there. There we go. And 2 other wires. These purple wires go to my fuse. Okay. So 2 purple wires just go to the fuse that you see right here. Then we're going to put back the bolts that hold this panel on, and we'll see if it starts. Stay tuned. All right, so our installation is complete. The only thing left to do is to make sure that we did everything correctly and to set up the ACS controller. So just hit your power button and it turned on. That means we connected everything correctly at this point. Then on this knob, you're going to push it in until the model of your smoker comes out. There it says YS480. Now it says YS640. At this point, there's a little button right here that says save. Just going to hit save. And then it's going to ask you again. just to make sure. You want to make sure that you select the correct model, because I think you only have one shot at this. If not, you got to call the folks at Yoder to help you out. So I'm just going to hit save. The settings are saved, restarting in 3 seconds. And there we go. So I got to tell you, the on a scale of 1 to 10, as far as the difficulty of installing this ACS controller, the igniter, the thermocouple, probably a 5. It's not very difficult. 10 would be extremely difficult, and 1 would be really easy. So yeah, I'm going to give it a 5. The instructions are very clear. The only thing missing from the instructions was that you need an 11/32 socket to remove the bolts on the inner fan. But other than that, it's really simple. Just take things off and put things back together, and unplug a few cables here and there. So I'm not going to go into setting the app on this video, but that's pretty straightforward. That's the only thing left to do. Pretty happy with this controller. I'm excited to use it. It's kind of like getting a new car or getting new tires on your car. I can't wait to test drive it. So if you guys have any questions on your install, please feel free to ask me any questions. Thanks again for watching. See ya.